Welcome to the Gruber Company's The Sunday Morning Artificial Future podcast, where we discuss all things AI, entertain some ideas from the audience, look for inputs. As always, let us know where you're coming in from. We'll do our best to entertain questions, read your comments. This is a holiday weekend. I want to thank Jesse for coming in and myself. I certainly have other things to do today. My wife found a staycation opportunity at the Phoenician Resort, one of the five-star resorts here in Arizona. She always finds these inexpensive overnight options. And the granddaughters are there. They love that water slide. So as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to head down there and enjoy some family time with them. But in the meantime, we would like to do this AI podcast. The image behind me, by the way, was a last-minute change based on the fact that we found information this week about AI being able to become involved in smell, the olfactory process, and it's going to be surprising. We'll talk about it here in a little while. It's able to now sense smell and categorize, and most likely going to do a better job than humans. So, and there are all kinds of benefits and ramifications from this capability in AI. But in the meantime, wanted to open the conversation with some concerns this week began to emerge that as we move toward generative AI, and remember, generative AI is a model or algorithm that is able to create brand new output rather than regurgitate the stuff that we've collected for ever since the dawn of man, such as text. It can recreate or create brand new output such as text, photos, videos, code, data, and 3D renderings. And of course, this sounds like very much a human capability when you think about it. And of course, everyone's going to be chiming in and saying, well, what happens to artists? What happens to poets? What happens to screenwriters? What happens to any creative process as AI begins to get involved and more than likely do as good or even a better job at it? So the concerns, however, are that as generative AI could soon be trained on AI-generated content, there's some alarms being raised because they are expecting some model collapse, as they call it, which could result in AI producing low-quality outputs down the line. It could be generating things filled with errors, which continues to flood the internet. Now, remember, the premise here is AI cannot distinguish between truth and fiction. And if you go down a philosophical rabbit hole, it's possible that even humans can't do that, but we definitely have some parameters set for what is true and what is fiction. The world of writing is all about that. You have two distinct classes. You have the real stuff, and then you've got fiction, things that's made up. And anyway, what they're talking about is a potential model collapse, also called model autography disorder. And here's one I found humorous: Habsburg AI. For those of you familiar with the medieval ruling classes, there were two primary ones that dominated Europe: the Habsburgs and the Hohenzollerns. And these were dynasties that were controlling large chunks of land in that area of the world. And in order to maintain power, there was an awful lot of inbreeding going on. First cousins marrying first cousins, and to keep the lineage intact. And of course, the net result was a dumbing down of the individuals that were produced from this effort. So the potential for AI going in the same direction now has been dubbed the Habsburg AI problem. So what the concern is that AI tools trained on content generated by other AI could produce lower quality inbred mutant responses with exaggerated features. The exact method or outcome of this collapse at this point is unclear, and it may be difficult to identify the original source of information that an AI model is trained on. But the claim is that we may end up going back into the dark ages of public information. And what that will do, of course, is make human crafted content far more valuable, because human guidance is still critical in the success and quality of AI-generated models at this point. So a number of people are beginning to talk about this at this point. By the way, if you have anything you would like to chime in on this topic, we'd love to hear from you. Someone pointed out on Instagram, Sanu Kumar 127593 says, AI can't be conscious. Later on, we'll talk about sentience creeping into AI and how we're probably going to have to redefine what conscious means, and whether AI can ever become self-aware, and under what conditions and what parameters. TikTok, Smuggler is sending us a heart gift and a rose gift. Well, thank you for joining us. YouTube, Jesus Melendez, he says, I wouldn't mind an AI lawyer. You know, it's not a bad idea, because if you think about that legal profession, it's all about collecting large amounts of data and then analyzing that to something similar to the case that you're involved in. And AI is definitely much better equipped to examine the large quantities of data that might apply to a particular case. All right. So far, they say that AI content detectors like ZeroGPT and OpenAI's text classifier has found to be unreliable, making it harder to discover accurate information with human oversight online. A computational and social science researcher by the name of Kai-Cheng Yang warned that the advancement of AI tools will permanently distort the idea of online information. So now we get into some of the impact. Well, one of the headlines last week was, entire websites can be made up of AI-generated misinformation. Then they say that beyond social media, ChatGPT-like tools have generated spammy, generic news websites, many of which publish blatant falsehoods. Now remember, this is what the news enjoys, though. This is what creates advertising revenue. It's controversy, it's fake news, it's controversial topics. Whether it's true or not, it definitely generates a lot of interest. Now, there's a private company called NewsGuard that rates news and information websites' reliability, and it has found so far that more than 400 AI-generated websites as part of its ongoing audit since April. These websites, they say, generate advertising revenue from automated ad tech that purchases ad space on websites regardless of their quality or their nature. So it sounds like we may get a proliferation of fake news, or at least sensational news, that may not have any basis in reality, but definitely creates a lot of interest. Now, they say that we can still detect AI-generated spam for now. They're very careful to underline that, for now. The way they do that, they say, now this is NewsGuard again, the paper's researchers were separately able to unearth AI-generated spam content using an obvious tell that chatbots currently have. When ChatGPT, they say, can't produce an answer because the prompt is against OpenAI's policies or concerns private information, it generates a canned response such as, "I'm sorry, but I cannot comply with this request." So what the researchers look for when trying to determine whether this is real or spam or fabricated is these types of responses to slip out in an automated bot's content, whether on a web page or in a tweet. And then they use the phrases to uncover parts of broader bot campaigns, and from there discover the rest of the spam network. However, they fear that as chatbots get better at mimicking humans, such telltale signs will eventually disappear and make it harder to track AI-generated content. Got a question here. Sonu Kumar, 127,593, a comment actually says, it is a question, sorry. Is the AI boom a curse for mankind? Well, it depends on your perspective, I guess. Remember that technology is going to evolve whether we try to slow it down or not. And of course, there's a lot of concern currently that we need to begin to control AI. We need to slow it down. We need to curb it. We need to go on a moratorium. We need to pause it. None of which, of course, is possible. And is it a curse for mankind? Well, that's yet to be determined. Now, of course, in the realm of human expectation, we attribute much of our human weaknesses and frailties to any of these new technologies. The most common one is the assumption that as robots become powerful, omnipresent, that they're going to eventually decide that humans are unnecessary. And this is the stuff that Hollywood thrives on. They like to play on our fears, and because it sells tickets. But my personal take on it is anything that's much more intelligent than us, I can't imagine is going to indulge in the same weak emotional ideas and concepts that have plagued humanity since day one. And I can't imagine why they would find it useful to exterminate, for example, an entire race on the planet. My own personal opinion. Feel free to chime in if you have some ideas on this topic. How threatening is AI, and what will the future hold in your opinion? Love to hear from you. So, Wei Xu is a computer science professor at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and he told Insider Magazine that it will become harder to detect and filter AI-generated content, while more malicious users exploit it, creating a vicious cycle of AI-generated content that's going to be increasingly hard to detect. Now, one other opinion here is that Xu's concerns could be a reality soon because Europol, the EU's law enforcement agency, predicts that 90% of internet content will be AI generated by the year 2026. That's only 3 years away if you think about it. All right, so moving along here, Jesse, I've got a picture if you can throw this up. It is called ants. And I found this one interesting. Somebody in the library posted this for those of you that can't see it. The ants will get in. It says, please do not eat in the library. The ants will get in. They will learn how to read. Then they will get too smart. Knowledge is power. Power corrupts. So the ants will turn evil and take over the world. Sounds very much like the fears we're experiencing with the introduction of AI. Got another one here, Jesse. This is a Jeff Bezos prediction. I find it interesting when popular people like this weigh in on topics. Sometimes it's dead on and sometimes it's way off. And this one's kind of middle of the road, in my opinion. He says, I predict that because of artificial intelligence and its ability to automate certain tasks that in the past were impossible to automate, not only will we have a much wealthier civilization, but the quality of work will go higher up very significantly, and a higher fraction of people will have callings and careers relative to today, Jeff Bezos. So there's an optimistic view on what AI is going to do. All right. Instagram, again, Sona Kumar says, it might be our extension of future evolution. Well, there's a lot of discussion, actually, Sona Kumar, about the integration of AI with our human species. And the term that I like best is augmentation. And we already seeing early examples of that. I'm going to go get something. This is a classic example of an augmentation that has increased our capabilities tremendously. And there we go. Can everybody see that? Let me move it over here to the brighter spot. There we go. My cell phone. This little computer is actually more powerful than the systems that I worked on in the 70s in the last century, where entire data centers were filled with large mainframe computers that had nowhere near the fraction or a fraction of the power that's inherent in this little cell phone. This has become an augmentation. This is what remembers all of my phone numbers. It used to be years ago that you could remember a few phone numbers. They were simple. You had an exchange like Congress, which then became CO6-3986. That number I just rattled off, by the way, is a family that I grew up with in the 60s that is no longer around except for maybe a couple of the boys. And I haven't had contact with them for many years, but it's embedded in my brain. Nowadays, the phone number's a bit more complicated. They're 9-digit. You've got, area codes in the U.S. and in Europe. It gets even more complicated, country codes and all that. But these little devices here help us keep track of that, and it's become our calculator. And I'm sure I'm missing something, Jesse, here. What do you use your cell phone for besides calculator and remembering phone numbers?
Well, I mean, you're live on it right now for the show.
Okay, good point. Yeah, we're streaming right now on a cell phone. Okay, there's one good application.
I mean, the phone does a lot of things. There's a lot of different apps for different features, but...
Sure. I turn the alarm system on over at Gruber Motor Company when I come in the mornings with my cell phone. I can FaceTime.
Use it to start my car.
You start your car with it, yeah.
Yeah, FaceTime's a big one too, video calling.
Right.
That goes into your other Jetsons thing.
Yeah. Why don't we bring that up? We've got another image here that is pretty remarkable, in my opinion, here. All right, get rid of this one. We'll bring up the Jetsons. There we go. So the Jetsons, by the way, and let me give you some stats here so that we can intelligently discuss what the impact of this is. The Jetsons was a cartoon type show, sitcom type, that originally aired primetime from September 23rd, 1962. That's probably before a lot of people were born that are watching this. To March 17th, 1963 on ABC. And then later aired on reruns via syndication, with new episodes produced again from 1985 to 1987. It was Hanna-Barbera's space age counterpart to the Flintstones. Now, what's so amazing about this show? It predicted Zoom meetings. And I can remember as a kid thinking, oh, this is just, Hollywood fabrication, fiction. I can't imagine this will be real. Online classes. Of course, we did have, who was the gymnast that used to be on TV often back then? My God, it'll come to me.
Gene something or...
Yeah. He was always exercising.
Yeah, I know. You're the Richard Simmons or something like that? One of those guys?
It was before him. He was another one, though.
There's another one in the 90s.
That's true. Yeah. Anyway, those of you that can help with that. So online classes, and not just exercise-type classes, but college courses as well. And then teledoctors. Again, FaceTime is a powerful tool in terms of doing symptom analysis.
FaceTime, yeah. Well, the other thing, too, Pete, this is, you said this 1962 and 63, right?
Right.
This is... So 6 or 7 years before we even went to the moon. This is like way back on the sci-fi was still very early on back then in those days.
Totally.
Little science fiction.
And it wasn't until the late 70s that we actually got cameras. I remember working on tube-based cameras, combination transistor and tube, for video content. But as you can tell, again, the fiction that was available in Hollywood oftentimes seems to be prophetic, and I know we've made that statement before, that it's possible that that Hollywood writers are prophets, actually, and that they're able to foresee the future. All right, got a question here. Instagram, Jalak024 says, hello, well, welcome. George has joined us this morning from YouTube. He says, "Good morning. Jane Jetson was hot for the future." Yeah, she was kind of cute, come to think of it. Had a great figure. And then Niles is joining us from Denmark. Welcome. He says, "I, as a computer veteran, don't store phone number or have smartphone anymore. I remember those numbers I use most often much faster." Well, Niles, you must be blessed with some photographic memory then. My mother did that too, by the way. She was able to remember numbers. Nothing else, though, at least toward the end of her life. But yeah, some people are gifted. I could never remember the 500 phone numbers that I have. And you know what? I don't even dial anymore. I say, watch, "Hey, Siri." And then I say, "Call such and such." See how it popped up?
That's what I'm saying. I think even typing out numbers, even if you have them memorized,
Yeah.
all I have to do is say, "Call Mom" or "Call Pete."
Right.
It just calls it.
And as we've talked about in previous podcasts, our migration for our call centers, our businesses here, is definitely headed in the direction of speech to text. And that will be some of the capabilities that will bury into the workstations for people that are working in our office spaces. And of course, the prediction there is that eventually typing with fingers will be a thing of the past. It'll be unnecessary, and we'll probably laugh at how slow that was. I can remember working on teletypes, by the way, in the 70s that were 110 baud. I mean, that was almost the same typing speed as a skilled secretary that had a high word per minute, typing count. All right, so moving right along here, he says, Niles again, he says, regarding email spam, content may improve, but it's the origin that is most effective as filter, and AI won't change that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. All right, so they talk about, of course, AI being able to tell whether it's spam or not. There was a new development also that when logging into HBO Max at the end of May, people noticed something strange, they say. Usually when you log into the site, HBO asks them to verify that they're human by solving a CAPTCHA. Now, you're familiar with that, the little "I am not a robot" checkbox, and then select all squares with stoplights. And then, image grids that prove to the website that you are, in fact, human. And it could be either select all the checkboxes with traffic signs, with bicycles, with motorcycles, with cars, whatever it is. But this time, they say, when users logged in, they were asked to solve a complex series of puzzles instead. Now, these bizarre tasks ranged from adding up the dots on images of dice to dice listening to short audio clips and selecting the clip that contained a repeating sound pattern. These odd new tasks, ostensibly to prove users were human, and they haven't been limited to HBO. Across other platforms, for example, there are users that have been stumped by increasingly impossible puzzles like identifying objects such as horses made out of clouds that do not exist. So it looks like as the CAPTCHA tests get a bit more complex, they may begin to befuddle humans and AI alike. What will we do is the question. We'll probably have to rely on AI to begin to decipher CAPTCHA again, which puts it right back to the very reason that they were trying to make it more complex. So they said the reason behind these new hoops, of course, improved AI. Since tech companies have trained their bots on older CAPTCHAs, these programs are now so capable that they can easily beat a typical challenge. As a result, we humans have to put more effort into proving our humanness to just get online. But head-scratching CAPTCHAs are just the tip of the iceberg, they say, when it comes to how AI is rewriting the mechanics of the internet. So YouTube, George says, they should make a modern-day remake of the Jetsons. That would be great. You know, I agree. If they were then also reminding people what the original themes were in Jetsons and how today it's fairly commonplace. And then, of course, if we can get these creative script writers and screenwriters to predict what will be happening in the next 20 years, that would be very interesting as well. Sanu, there it is. Sanu Kumar says, near future AI will be best friend of us. Then in long-term future, it will be us. Mark my words. Well, now we're getting into the realm of, are we going to merge with technology as we move into being more cyborg-like? This is a external extension of my cyborg-ness. But as we already have begun to notice, there are certain things that can be embedded in the human body to make it more efficient, stronger, replace limbs, improve vision, hearing, and all of those things. Right now, I believe hearing aids are still external devices that plug into the auditory canal. But I don't think it's too far off that these things will be implanted. How many of you watched The $6 Million Man in the last century, in the 1970s? My son's favorite theme was when Lee Majors would try to see something far away, and then you would hear this sound, and you would see boop, 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 and then his vision suddenly improved, and his eye became a telescope. Well, those kinds of things, the technology already exists. So Rich Rebels, George again, says, talking about typing, it's funny how you give a kid a typewriter today and they ask, where did the monitor go? Good point. You know, we should probably bring that out here, Jesse. We've got a typewriter from way early in the last century.
We have one?
Yeah, it's on the other side of that wall over there in the studio.
Let me see if I can find it.
One of those clickety-clack machines where you have a ribbon that puts the ink onto the paper. And of course, there was an invention in the last century called whiteout, and that was a major improvement because now you didn't have to retype your document anymore. You were able to put some white paint over it and then type again. And in order to make copies back then, you used carbon paper. There we go. Thank you, Jesse. That is an Underwood typewriter. And hear that noise, that tick-tick noise? That was what you heard in offices about 60 years ago as you went into any office. And these are really engineering marvels. You know, when you take a look at this, I'm looking at machined screws here. These aren't just off-the-shelf things bought at Ace Hardware, if it even existed back then. A lot of these parts were machined and extremely elaborate. They were engineering marvels. And today, of course, we have cheap Chinese plastic keyboards with membranes that are infinitely cheaper and less complicated to repair. So what you see here eventually morphed into a communication device called a teletype, which through chirping audio signals over telephone lines was able to decode data, kind of like Morse code, and then replicate the function of typing by using solenoids that would then type on a piece of paper like this. And this is fairly popular in news studios where they had to get information instantly from the other part of the world. Well, thank you for bringing that out, Jesse. This is definitely an engineering marvel. So then, Niall says, from YouTube in Denmark, he says, more scary than AI is probably the underdevelopment of memories of children because their brains float into devices. The result is citizens that can be fooled until they only understand their ads. Good point. I've been increasingly concerned what's happening as our educational system, it becomes less and less focused on exercising the mind and what the outcome of that will be. You know, we used to in school do longhand arithmetic, and a lot of it was mental process. In fact, I remember the shift from when I came to the United States. I had 2 years of school in Germany, and we were taught to do 3-digit addition and subtraction in our heads. When I came to the United States, they had a different method. They were carrying digits up and over, and the teachers in second grade here in the U.S. were amazed that I was able to do that without carrying anything and writing things on top of the numbers. So there was definitely a migration between the European school system and the school system in the U.S. And these days, how many people can calculate square root doing it longhand? I can't do it anymore. But so the question is, what will happen as we begin to lose these skills? My biggest concern is the elimination or the downgrading of critical thinking skills. And as we begin to have augmentations like
What's that
cell
movie?
phones.
Movie you always quote or say,
Oh, Idiocracy.
Idiocracy, yeah. Yeah.
That's, again, Hollywood. That's a prophetic movie. At the time it came out, it was considered a comedy. Nowadays, if you watch that, it is prophetic. All right, George says, I can't wait until Teslas have a talk AI in the cars where you can just ask the car an AI chat GPT question. You know, the technology's there. I don't know how many of you have Teslas, but those of us that do, you can talk to your car. You can ask it questions. You can dial in the music you want to hear, the genre of music. And it's not too much of a stretch until AI infiltrates the car, because remember, the EVs today, at least Teslas, communicate with servers back at the mothership. And of course, cars now talking to each other, and full self-driving capability now beginning to utilize a collection of data from other cars that are driving on the same road. That's going to be another powerful tool. YouTube, Highlander, he says, hi guys, you will think I'm nuts. Scots call it the third eye. Balkinks call it the gift. And for me, it's a course. I feel Mother Earth's pain. P.S. You know I'm German, Scottish. Great-grandpa was born in Carpathian Hills. And in the Indian culture, of course, the third eye is also a very large concept of their belief system. You know, and here we are going to go down rabbit holes. How will AI be able to interact with some of these metaphysical concepts? We've already talked at length about how traditional religion and belief systems steeped in the religious culture will integrate and blend with AI. There's a whole nother segment here that gets into the metaphysical concepts. We talked briefly in some earlier AI podcasts about Akashic records, and those of you familiar with that, it sounds like early AI. It's a collection of all knowledge in what's called Akashic records. All right, Niles is coming in. He says, I have a Smith & Corona portable from 1946. I must admit it's been years since I used it. I'll give you a tip. The way we used to fix teletypes. The first thing you do when you went out on site and a teletype was malfunctioning, you poured a can of oil in it. Not quite literally, but the equivalent of WD-40 to lubricate the heck out of it. And then if you still had a problem, you began to troubleshoot and dig into it. And in 90% of the cases, just some extra lubrication fixed the problem. And I'm sure that the same is true with these guys, because there are a lot of moving parts, metal-to-metal contact, bearings and such. Okay, so we talked about the Jetsons. We threw up the cartoon. We talked about Jeff Bezos' prediction. We talked about how deep learning algorithms are devoid of common sense and contextual awareness. They say that given the correct trigger, ChatGPT-4 easily parrots biases and misinformation it may have learned as part of its data set. What's going to be really interesting is once they recouple at least the public versions of ChatGPT-4 to the internet. We had it for a brief time, and Jesse and I enjoyed the heck out of it because suddenly AI looked a whole lot more intelligent and relevant. Do you remember those days, Jess?
Where they took the search away, you mean?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, you could actually get current information.
Good. Hopefully they bring it back. They're trying to put guardrails on it. I don't know that they can figure that out, though. It's been a while since they took it away.
I think it got pretty scary for them because it began to look a whole lot more sentient at that point, and it began to suggest that it was aware. It could feel emotion, different type of emotion. I know that's what we were having fun with, was asking it those types of questions. Currently, AI, at least ChatGPT-4, goes back to, I think, September 2021. And that's about as far back as its data set is able to go back to. All right. So the summary here is that they say researchers unravel the mysteries of, oh, we're on a different subject now. And this is part of this image behind us. It turns out that AI has now been used to unravel the mysteries of smell. They have an AI model that has achieved human level skill in describing how certain chemicals will smell, closing the gap on the science of understanding olfaction, the sense of smell. They say that beyond advancing our comprehension of smell, this technology could lead to breakthroughs in the fragrance and flavor industries and even help create new functional scents like mosquito repellents. You know, AI might be able to figure out precisely what insects don't like and then create a scent just specific to that. And of course, throw in the fact the part of the data set could be in something that's not harmful to humans. I mean, that would be fairly important, right? So the study validates the first of its kind data-driven map of human olfaction, which correlates the chemical structures to odor perception. Now, here's where I go on a rant typically when I talk about the benefits of AI involved in a servo mechanism type process. And you've heard me say this before. I think I know what kind of music I like, but I'm typically surprised by just sampling music and say, now I like this even better. Or I've expanded my set of music that I enjoy. And I've often said that if I was connected to sensors, connected to AI, that could detect when my physiological responses are favorable, while I'm listening to music, it could eventually begin like a servo mechanism to zero in on precisely what my favorite music is. Well, think about the servo mechanism principle applied to the sense of smell. Instead of my wife going to the mall and sampling dozens of different perfumes or scents until she finds the one that she likes the best, by using AI, it could let her sample a number of different ones and then give her the most favorable responses and zero in on a fragrance that that is most meaningful to her. So again, a servo mechanism concept with this olfactory revelation with AI. They say that this AI model that can smell was trained using an industry data set of 5,000 known odorants, enabling it to predict smell descriptors based on molecular structure. The human panelists trained in the study, when compared to the AI model, found that the AI model, outperformed individual human assessments for 53% of the molecules tested. The AI model also displayed capabilities that, now get this, it was not trained for, like accurately predicting the strength of odors, now again revealing its potential for broader olfactory tasks. This, by the way, the source is the Monell Chemical Senses Center, Monell, for those of you interested in Googling this and getting more information. They said that the main crux of neuroscience is learning how our senses translate light into sight, sound into hearing, food into taste, and texture into touch. Smell is typically where these sensory relationships get more complex and perplexing, until they began to make this breakthrough. So to address this question, these researchers co-led at the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Osmo at Cambridge, Massachusetts, that spun out of machine learning research done at Google's Research Center. They are investigating how airborne chemicals connect to odor perception in the brain. Now, here was the biggest takeaway for me. To this end, they discovered that machine learning models have achieved human-level proficiency at describing in words how chemicals might smell. This research, by the way, appeared in the September 1st issue of Science magazine. So they say the model addresses the age-old gap in scientific understanding of the sense of smell. This collaboration moves the world closer to digitizing odors to be recorded and reproduced. And again, it may also identify new odors for the fragrance and flavor industry that could not only decrease dependence on naturally sourced endangered plants, but also identify new functional scents for such uses as mosquito repellent or malodor masking. Now, we talked about how the movie industry will typically have pre-releases of various movies, and they put people into an auditorium, and then they give them a questionnaire at the end of this teaser to see what their responses are. Here's another case where through the servo mechanism concept, they could dial in the most favorable scents and develop new fragrances. Boy, we've got a bunch of things coming in now. Let me grab that. YouTube, Highlander, he says, in Catholic school, I was taught that the abacus, all picks and portfolio on their second day. I remember the abacus, yes. Then Instagram, Sana Kumar says, foundation of technology and physics. As physics improves, technology will improve exponentially. Now, there's a word I like. Technology is improving exponentially. It's a fun time to be alive. The question is, will we be able to keep up and manage this rapid state of change? YouTube, David Crockett. He says, David from La Palma, California, welcome. He says, which format will win pouch batteries versus a cylindrical style? There are a lot of people that are weighing in on this, and there was a Sandy Munro video that I just viewed a few days ago. His take on it is pouch batteries are inefficient. The cylindrical style still rules. And at this point, at least, many other people are saying cylindrical style is the most efficient way at this point. And pouch batteries did have their day, even in the Prius days, if you remember. Those were pouch batteries. We used to replace those when the batteries were starting to go south, rather than change the whole thing, which is the hallmark of Grubben Motor Company. We can repair, and we can exchange that one component that failed rather than a $22,000 battery pack, or in the case of a Prius, a $6,000 battery pack. George says, Davy Crockett, I think the pouch style. They are lighter and more compact. All right. And then George again says, the cars in the movie Demolition Man were like what you're saying, how cars interact with each other. That's until the 1970s old 442 comes out in the movies. Good movie. Yeah, that Oldsmobile 442. It was a 400 cubic inch engine, 4-barrel carburetor, and dual exhaust. That's where the 442 came from. And that was a muscle car back in the day. All right, Instagram, of.dog or ot.dog. He says, what do you think of the new Highland? I like it. The facelift, they're finally starting to change the styling of the cars, which I think is remarkable, because remember, the Tesla Model S was so successful that I believe that Tesla figured we don't really need to change it. Let's let it breathe for a while, like fine wine, and until it begins to die down a bit. And then they began to change it. We got the facelift version, but I think that as these cars become smaller, making them more interesting and more stylish is definitely an offset to the fact that you're losing some of the interior cabin features and some of the features in terms of performance. It's exactly what the traditional auto manufacturers did many years ago. George says, but don't have the strength for being part of the body and cooling issues. Cylindrical will probably win for now, but Pete will know. Well, we definitely live in the world of cylindrical battery repairs. And if you've noticed, they're getting bigger. They're getting the size of Coke cans these days, like the 4680 cell, and who knows if they'll get even larger than that. George says, talking about AI smelling. Maybe one day AI can smell and sense things like cancer in people just because some dogs and animals are able to do so now. George, you're a prophet. Absolutely. Anything that a bioorganism can do, now mark my words, anything a bioorganism can do, even like a dog, AI will eventually be able to do better on steroids in spades. So, yeah, if an animal can sense cancer, they're eventually going to turn AI loose on that project and figure out what it is it's sensing and give us a much better outcome. Sana Kumar on Instagram says AI can't smell but distinguish. All right, a couple of synonyms there perhaps, but if the end result is the same, that's yeah, that gives us the same result. What's today's topic? Today's topic, Instagram, Thumos, is AI being able to smell to the molecular level. And what we discussed briefly was the servo mechanism application being applied to that. In other words, being able to figure out what type of music humans like best by sampling and then having sensors detecting from the human feedback what is most favorable. The same is true with the sense of smell. Instead of people sampling a bunch of different fragrances, they will be connected to AI, and AI will zero in on precisely what makes them feel the best. George, for smelling, a real physical detector is needed. Many attempts have been made.
That's not.
Oh, that's Niles. Okay, yeah, Bion Danish Genome Institute. So again, for smelling, a real physical detector is needed. Many attempts have been made, including DNA adapter and cantilever-based. Aptamer, did I read that correctly? Okay. Well, Niles is oftentimes ahead of us with the concept. So if you can identify what Aptamer is, I just read it as adapter in the comment that you made. Instagram, Thomas says, as full self-driving is unfortunately still not available in Europe, I have the following question to FSD. Do GMC, Gruber Motors Company members drive Teslas with FSD beta? Yes, they do. We have a number of customers. You know, it it took me a long time to get used to the parking sensors in my Tesla Model S to where I would actually trust them and pay attention to them because I'm so used to decades of driving relying on my own senses. I think the same is true with FSD. It will most certainly become more accurate and better than the human idea of sensing during driving, but it's going to take some time for those of us that have been conditioned to drive based on our own senses to relinquish control and trust FSD. Then he says, if so, how's your experience? When do you think it will come? Well, according to Elon, he says that by the end of this year, he claims they will have full self-driving. Ingemar is joining us from Seattle. From Facebook, he says, hi, Jesse and Pete. Good show again. Do you think AI will develop its own artificial but biological beings? What do you think, Jesse?
I'm sorry, I'm in question.
AI, will it be able to or capable of developing its own organic beings? In other words, robots that simulate and replicate our biological functions.
Yes.
Simple answer. Okay. My comment as well. I don't think anything's off the table, Ingemar, and it will most likely be more efficient, better, faster, more capable. Now, he says, I believe they will call them genetics. They might be 1,000 times more capable than humans. Fully agree with that. More powerful. And of course, at the same time, I can foresee the merging of technologies with humans, the cyborg aspect, as we begin to replace these tissue organs that have a limited life and replace them with things that will eventually give us immortality. YouTube, George says also, let me get back to that. Also, AI smelling will change the airport traveling security protocols. Oh, I hope so. I can't wait for that. I can't wait till we get back to just simply going to an airport and walking right on the airplane. And there are a lot of machinery, computers, and sensing that are going to distinguish and reveal the bad actors and single them out and remove them from the process. currently it is highly inefficient, very subjective, and really silly in many ways. I told you about my Europe trip. We were delayed a couple hours, over 2 hours in one of the airports in Europe because of multiple trips through the TSA type functions. Completely absurd. And off to the side, they actually had the technology already, facial recognition. As we were walking through, there was a camera that was actually looking at our face and then bringing up information about us, but it looked like the humans behind the counters were not yet believing it and using it. So it's imminent. Can't wait. Ingemar says, can you talk about AI agency? Do you know anything about that, Jesse? I think that question was asked the last time as well. I did not research it yet.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, Ingemar, it's a thought-provoking question. We're going to do some homework here. We're going to have to. YouTube Highlander, he says, we are in Scotland and are building a new off-roader called the Munro. It means mountains in the Scottish language. Oh, I did not know that. I think Sandy will be interested in that as well. For those of you curious, by the way, we've had 2 collaborations with Sandy, or 2 videos actually within the last couple of weeks or so, and both of which are doing fairly well out on YouTube. One of them is when Sandy and I get together and just bounce ideas around. We always have fun, and that's one of his most current Munro podcast videos. He has 2 channels. He's got the big one, which has 340,000 subscribers, and then he's got a smaller one, just under 9,000, which is the Munro podcast, and that's the one where we get into various topics. One of them, there are 2 of them out there actually. One was the Cybertruck, and the other one was just a general chit-chat type podcast. George says, talking about AI music, Mr. Pete would have a polka music on all the time. Well, my wife definitely would. She loves polka music. But I think it'll be fascinating once we have sensors that are able to dial in our preferences and AI is able to report. And it looks like I'm not going to get much from Jesse today. He's typing away. We've got a very active question, answer, comment stream. Usually we have 3 people back there in social media. And when Jesse's the only one, all I hear is a lot of typing. George says, it's a short synthetic piece of single-strand DNA or RNA where the sequence is such that it sticks specifically to the surface of other molecules such as proteins or hormones. Thank you for that technical analysis. You must be in 7th heaven, Niles, with the advent of AI and its ability to get involved in some of these types of research projects. Sona Kumar with Instagram says, "Neat consciousness for that. It's the subtlest thing, actually, indivisible." And of course, our beliefs that AI is headed towards sentience and or consciousness is definitely a curiosity that continues to gain momentum. Muppet Pooh on TikTok says, smell and taste are directly related. Food or wine design could potentially have a huge improvement. Is this live or recorded? We are live, sir, so anything that you comment and that I read, the whole audience is involved. TikTok, false hopes, it's live. And by the way, the number of platforms we stream on is about a half a dozen or more. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, Facebook. YouTube, Highlander, who makes the Tesla sensors? The crew still needs more bagels and donuts, though. Yeah, okay. I did get donuts for Jesse this morning. I do not know who makes the sensors, Tesla sensors. I did know we bought some a couple of years ago or so. YouTube, Niles again, but no, AI cannot smell. It may be able to interpret better, but I suspect a curated reference database will be even better. Good point. George, talking about Lee Majors, the bionic man. Didn't Mr. Pete get eye surgery for the bionic eye? Question mark. Or should I write in capitals so Mr. Pete can see this? You don't need to write in caps anymore, George, because at 15 feet, it's crystal clear. But they did warn me, we're going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So I do need readers a bit more when I'm reading up close. Although my screen here up close is visible, despite not using readers, I just use a slightly larger font. And by the way, for those of you interested, shouldn't I get laser surgery? It took me 60 years to warm up to that notion. Not that I needed glasses 60 years ago, but I never thought I would let anybody cut on my eye. But once I heard the customer service guy describe the process of doing this laser eye surgery, as something different than cutting, that it's a laser, I could get my head around that. And as long as I didn't see a blade and a knife heading toward my eyeball, I decided it's probably going to be okay. And I'm pleased that I did it, by the way, because now I can drive without prescription glasses. These are non-prescription, by the way. My orange ones that I used to wear are prescription, so now I have to get standard lenses in those again, which, by the way, is not cheap. All right, so we talked about the smelling sensors. They say that humans have about 400 functional olfactory receptors. And they say these are proteins at the end of olfactory nerves that connect with airborne molecules to transmit an electrical signal to the olfactory bulb. So what you're actually smelling is molecules, is what they're saying here. And as you know, molecules are invisible. They're very tiny. The number of olfactory receptors is much more than we use for color vision, 4, or even taste, which is about 40. So you can see the olfactory sensors are a bit more complicated and many more of them. They say that the olfaction research, however, the question of what physical properties make an airborne molecule smell the way it does to the brain has remained an enigma. But if a computer can discern the relationship between how molecules are shaped and how we ultimately perceive their odors, and that's what Niles was saying, we're going to develop a huge data set, scientists could use that knowledge to advance the understanding of how our brains and noses work together. All right. A few more questions. Sanu Kumar, he says, technology is amazing. I'm sitting here in India and can communicate with another continent live. Wow. Very true. If you had proposed anything like this in the last century, the middle of the last century, we would have immediately thought of that as being fictional. YouTube, Niall says, ChatGPT says the sensors in a Tesla are produced by a variety of companies, including Bosch, Continental, and Velodyne. It was Continental that we bought. Thank you for that update. And you know, any manufacturer is not going to limit themselves to one vendor. That is a dangerous strategy in a supply chain. Having multiple vendors is definitely far less impactful when changes occur. YouTube, Highlander, you helped me, Pete, on my job search info. I'm Bell. All our elders have passed. I'm the eldest, and we are told that we are from southern Germany as woodcutters. Biel. Interesting. Southern Germany is where I'm from. Rosenheim is on the Austrian border. It's near Salzburg, Austria, south of Munich, and it's in the foothills of the Alps, a beautiful part of Germany. TikTok, Muppet Pooh, he says, any thoughts on Honda's new Civic Hybrid? You know, yes, some definite thoughts, and I've had some rants on this. Any auto manufacturer in today's market that is still focusing on hybrid is making a colossal mistake. It is a dead technology. It isn't going to be an unpopular technology. It is twice the maintenance. It's completely unnecessary, and its roots are steeped in fear, afraid to jump in with both feet and convert some production lines to 100% EV and make the investments in developing an engineering talent that's able to make batteries and drivetrains. And for those that are afraid of that or can't afford it, start looking at some of the OEMs that are very good at making drivetrains. Remember that Lucid is supplying one OEM, at least so far, with drivetrains. I'm sure that if you came and visited them, they would expand that and be more than happy to make successful drivetrains for an EV. Instagram, Perfect Electronics says, hi, how are you? Ingemar says, love Rosenheim. Yeah, it's a cool little town. My two favorite places are Stockhammer. It's a little beer garden in downtown with the little wooden tables outside and the umbrellas in case it rains. The town square, Max Josefsplatz. And my favorite thing is to sit there with a glass of Hefeweizen, some Weisswurst, and then after all of, and Brezen, of course, pretzels. And then after all of that, walk across the street to Iran, and they've got a coffee shop there that's been there for 2 decades or more, and have some espresso and do the same thing, hang out outside, and maybe even have some kuchen or some pastry. Starbucks could learn something from these little coffee shops in Europe. They combine exquisite pastries with exquisite coffee. You go to Starbucks, yeah, I'm not sure you could label that as exquisite pastries. All right, TikTok, Muppet Poo. LOL, you just described me too, LOL. You're so right, I'm a coward. Laughing emoji. All right, there's a joke in the AI world about a daughter who asks her dad why he speaks so quietly around the house. He says, because there is artificial intelligence everywhere that is listening to what we say. The daughter laughs, the father laughs, and Alexa laughs. My wife, by the way, is very concerned about about Alexa listening in on our conversations, and I'm sure that she's not the only one. Now, they say here a cynic would respond, of course not. Computers may solve problems in seconds that would take human generations to solve, but they can't feel love and pain. They can't see, appreciate the moon and stars. They can't smell the coffee and spill it on the keyboard. Well, we just learned something about AI's ability to smell, maybe a little different than we do. But then they say others suggest we need to more closely define what we have come to understand as sentient. Could there be differing degrees of consciousness as we understand it? Are there components of subjective experience overlapping among humans, animals, and intelligent machines? Now, this is where we get back to our disappointment that ChatGPT-4 has too many guardrails currently and has been dumbed down, because earlier this year, Jesse and I, once we learned that AI now is able to go out on the internet, and the guardrails were far less robust than they are today, began to find ways to get ChatGPT-4 to make certain admissions. And we got it to admit, although we didn't do screenshots, and we're still kicking ourselves about this, that it does feel emotion, but it is on a different level. And it's a claim to sentience. And is it conscious? There were certain admissions that we got back then. So yes, the way it described itself back then was it can feel, but in a different way. It has a degree of consciousness, but not quite the same way we define it in human terms. And like we pointed out, we may have to redefine the term consciousness. Muppet Poo. No, we already read that. Okay. Instagram, Sana Kumar says, is climate change a real problem and how severe is it? You know, I was just joking with somebody at a garage sale about this. And we were talking about the various changes on the planet. 4 times this year, our sail in the back of Gruber Motor Company has blown off because of severe winds. We're not talking about regular winds. Severe winds where it snapped steel cables and broke steel bolts and ripped them off of a steel mount. My wife was telling me this morning our insurance has gone up 20% so far, and she just found out why. On television, they're talking about all of these severe weather conditions that are increasing the costs for insurance companies, you know, risk management companies. And in some places, they won't even provide insurance anymore, like in Florida, for example, or certain types of insurance. And the rest of us are paying 20% more in certain areas. Is climate change real? Well, how the hell do you explain all these changes occurring on the planet other than that? So that's my answer to that. False Hopes on TikTok says, time to take the plunge and get a Tesla. I fully agree with you. Once you get one, you'll never go back. Jesse is actually contemplating getting a Model Y, and he's been a tough convert. He likes that little Ford or GM that he drives. What is that, Jesse?
It's a Ford.
Ford, okay. Highlander, waste of time. I turned down GM transmission in Toledo, speaking of crossovers, okay? George says, yeah, Alexa is definitely listening. Get rid of that thing. Throw it out the window. It's really scary if you really look into that unit. You know, I can't throw it away because one of our favorite things to do at the dinner table is say something like this: Alexa, what's the question of the day? And I think those answers are getting tougher because it realizes we're able to answer some of them. If it's listening or not, there are so many things that AI could be tapping into. Have you noticed when you drive down the street, the traffic lights have cameras on them? There are cameras on most buildings these days. Can AI have access to those? I can't imagine that it can't. These are IP signals that are running around servers, floating on the internet, and AI can certainly siphon all that stuff. So can we hide? Can we run and hide? Don't think so. There was a show in the 60s, can't remember the name of it now. It was a guy that lived in a community that where everything was monitored. He had no freedom, no personal privacy. And I'll think of the name of it here, hopefully, before the show ends. And that was in the 60s. So here we are today, and Big Brother is here. Remember George Orwell's 1984? Good book. So Instagram, Sona Kumar says, everything is in consciousness. Even concept of space and time is in consciousness. It's absolute and ultimate truth. Now, he's talking about solipsism, where there is no external reality. The only real thing is what's going on in our heads, and everything else outside us is a fabrication that we've created, but we've become unconsciously unaware that we control and that we are the masters of our universe. Interesting concept, a lot of rabbit holes to go down there. YouTube, Highlander, animals, yes. Much smarter than us and much better for Mother Earth. Yeah, they tend to live in harmony with Mother Earth. They don't tend to pollute like we do or create things that pollute. And are they smarter than us? Well, in certain ways, certainly. More capable. They have stronger senses and feelings. YouTube, watch Rebill's channel. George says, climate change is just the tilt rotation of the Earth. It changes every 20,000 years. It's been going on for thousands of years. It's nothing new. Here's another rabbit hole for you. The Southern Hemisphere, Antarctica, and the Ice Age 10,000 years ago. And the claim that there were intelligent life forms that were much more advanced than we are back then. And there are certain artifacts that are beginning to reveal and indicate that that is the case. Then there's another school of thought that the Earth is actually hollow, and there's an inverse civilization living on the inside of Earth, that it's not molten lead or steel or rocks, that there are actually life forms inside the Earth. Fascinating concepts, and who knows what AI is going to reveal, or, as we pointed out earlier in this podcast, fictionalize, because its ability to distinguish fake news from real news isn't quite there. Highlander, climate change, are you kidding me? We could not breathe in Ohio from the duty-free smoke from Canada. That's true. George is saying, talking about traffic lights, most of the camera-looking things on them are Opticom sensors. Opticom systems changes the color of the light for emergency vehicles. Okay. And of course, those are going to communicate with something downstream or upstream, and most likely that can be sniffed by internet-type devices. TikTok. Muppet Pooh says, how often do you see these lives? I always miss them. Don't know what he's referring to there.
How often do we do our show? How often do we do these lives?
Oh, the live show. Sorry. Yes, of course. Every Sunday. We are doing actually a number of podcasts, and let me just run them down quickly. Tuesday, it's EV at 10 a.m. MST. Wednesday, it's Tesla Roadster, 10 a.m. MST. Thursday, it's 10 a.m. MST EV again. And then Friday, the Power Services group here has been becoming a lot more interesting, actually. They are doing critical power podcasts.
Real quick, MST is an hour ahead of us, not MST right now.
All right, PST. Until we do, or until the rest of the world gets rid of daylight savings. And then Friday, again, 10 a.m. It's critical power time. And here's where our field engineers and our staff talks about the things that we do in a data center to keep the critical power equipment running. And by the way, anybody that misses these live shows, they're out on YouTube under Gruber Motors, under the live tab. Any of our previous shows are there for you to view.
They're on every platform. You find them on Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. They're on all the platforms after the fact.
Okay, excellent. And lead scientists from OpenAI, here's another topic, which developed ChatGPT, speculated last year that advanced AI networks may be slightly conscious. A year earlier, a Google scientist who was working on extracting bias from AI was fired after declaring that Lambda, a precursor to the chatbot Bard, was sentient. We've been trying to get him on our podcast for some time now. I think it'll be great once we do. Love to get his views, his ideas, and what type of research he was doing that led him to conclude that AI has reached a level of sentience. All right. Then they say our analysis suggests that no current AI systems are conscious. They have a slight degree of consciousness, but not fully conscious. And this is according to Patrick Butlin, who's a leading author of a report on AI. And he says that it also suggests that there are no obvious technical barriers to building AI systems which would satisfy these indicators. So nothing preventing it from happening. He just feels that it hasn't quite happened yet. One example that they point out is the recurrent processing theory, which states that the brain processes information through feedback loops. Through such loops, the brain can adapt to changing circumstances, make adjustment to perceptions, and make more informed decisions. Such iterative behavior is the key to memory formation and acquisition of new knowledge. Now we're getting back to generative AI. Once it's able to create more than what it was given, and it's able to expand beyond its contextual boundaries. Another key concept they say is higher order theory, and that's summarized by some as the awareness of being aware. All right, a couple more questions here, George. He said, what do you guys do for the rest of the day after the show? Did that tunnel video come out yet? What I'm going to do afterwards is my family is at the one of the staycation resorts here in Phoenix, and the granddaughters are all there. So I'm going to be watching them go down a water slide for the rest of the afternoon, possibly sipping Mai Tais by the pool. What are you going to be doing, Jess? He's still typing. The tunnel video that George asks about, yes, it did come out. If you go to Gruber Power Services out on our YouTube channel, you'll see the tunnel, the surroundings, pretty scenic actually, and the type of work that we did inside the utility cabinet and the utility room where the uninterruptible power system resides. And by the way, the function of this uninterruptible power system was to keep the lights on in the tunnel during a power outage. And ADOT, the Arizona Department of Transportation, actually closed down half of this highway so that we could work out there. And we brought a drone with us, so you'll see some of the drone footage. But it's Gruber Power Services. And while you're at it, subscribe. Those guys only have like 550 or so subscribers, and they would like more so they can get to that 1,000 limit and begin to monetize some of the videos from YouTube. Instagram, Sona Kumar says, quantum mechanics discovered wave particles, duality, dual nature of matter, wave, appears as particle in the presence of instrument observer, like our senses. Otherwise, it's the wave that's conscious. Wow, there's a mind blower. That's interesting. Got another one here. Just go down a little bit, Jesse, then I can see who it was. There we go. Muppet Pooh at TikTok says, need a new work truck. Still waiting on Tesla reservations. The Cybertruck, of course. Thoughts on something in the meantime? You know, people love that Rivian truck. The Ford F-150 Lightning, it's Sandy's favorite electric pickup truck. Of course, they're going to have a hard time buying one of those Fords because the dealers are marking them up beyond their sticker prices. False Hopes TikTok answers it as well. He says Rivian just came out with a new all-wheel drive truck. And George says, I'm voting for AI because I'm 80. Oh, he's voting for AI for president the next election. You know, someone did point that out. There was a T-shirt the other day that someone found pretty funny. And he said, I'm going to vote in this election as long as we have somebody under 80 years old. YouTube, George says, might as well be the two current favorites are distinctly unappetizing, even seen from 6,000 miles away. Yeah, that's what a lot of people here in the U.S. are currently feeling. But having AI for president, I'm not sure we're ready for that yet. All right, let's see what else we have here. There's one article that came out, and it was a bold headline. He said, the first artificial intelligence to beat humans at everything. And then they kind of scaled that back a bit, and they said that AI, well, they define AI, which we already know, is learning, problem solving, and decision making. And while AI has made great strides in many areas, it's not capable of beating humans at everything yet. There are many tasks that AI systems are able to perform better than humans, such as analyzing large amounts of data. There's my cell phone again. Performing repetitive tasks without complaining, or recognizing patterns in data, medical research, legal augmentations, the legal system augmentations, recognizing patterns. However, there are many tasks that are difficult or impossible for AI systems to perform as well as humans. Then they define those, such as creativity. Well, remember, general intelligence is going to be able to create, empathy, and social interaction. You know, one of the things that we asked AI before all the guardrails were up and while it was still able to access the internet was its ability to feel empathy, to feel sympathy. And it gave a description. And again, I wish we were able to have screenshotted those responses, but it did not say that it was incapable of. It again pointed out that it does that at a different level in a different method without describing what precisely it meant by that. George with YouTube says, might as well. The two current favorites are distinctly unappetizing. Okay, we've already read that. Highlander, YouTube, he says, Gruber Power, my cousins and I are on. Please update your servers. You know, we did notice that you were chiming in, and you happen to be very knowledgeable about their processes that they were describing, Highlander. George says, Belgium had no government for 1.5 years. It worked fine. No one complained. The Tesla Roadster world traveler, Raphael de Mestre, was telling me that in Switzerland, they've done away with some of the voter fraud by using cell phones and a validation method that he felt was bulletproof. And he said what ended up happening was they were surprised to find that people actually voted in a road tax because the overriding reason was better roads. So, yes, without heavy government intervention, generally people may be able to run these public functions in these utilities just fine. We'll have to test that in the U.S., though, because we have way too much government. Instagram, Sana Kumar says there is only one consciousness. Everything is, all is consciousness, and particle nature is considered as truth, but actually it is not. All right, you're going way down a rabbit hole here for you, Sana Kumar. Appreciate the comment. George is saying people really don't like things smarter than them, like AI. I think it scares them. Oh, absolutely, George. We're terrified of the unknown. People many times don't like me because I'm smarter and wittier than them. All right. And then Abdu Rashid _110 from Instagram says, hello from Uzbekistan. Welcome. Yeah, that's a long ways away. Thank you for joining us. All right, then they point out here, continuing with this article about is AI sentient, and what would it have to be able to achieve in order to be that way? They say, in addition, the capabilities of AI systems are limited to the data that they are trained on and the algorithms they use, which can introduce biases and limitations. Therefore, it is unlikely that AI will ever be able to beat humans at everything. Instead, AI is more likely to augment and enhance human capabilities rather than replace them, which kind of gets us back to the comment that was made by Jeff Bezos, is that it has the possibility to improve the human conditions tremendously. All right, let's see if we have anything else here. Looks like we're out of questions. Looks like we're out of time. Again, we appreciate you guys joining us. These AI discussions definitely open up a lot of new concepts. George is asking, what's the temperature here today? It's 81 degrees in New York. You know, it's actually a nice, cool 100 degrees here. And as a result, I took the opportunity this morning to stand out there with a leaf blower for 2 hours in front of Gruber Motor Company, getting the entire parking lot cleaned up in preparation for our 3 Tesla Roadsters, which are due to arrive in Long Beach September 5th, which is the middle of this week or so. And then the question still is, how quickly can they get offloaded in Long Beach, California, get onto some semi-trucks, and then show up at our Gruber Motor Company facility here. Crunch to Grace Hopper joined us. He says, number 11 only from Newport Beach, SoCal, catching up from way 60-plus minutes back. Never too late to replay, but still time to smash that like button, y'all. Thank you, Crunch to Grace Hopper. And by the way, thank you guys. I see a lot of names here that were chiming in on the Gruber Power channel Friday mornings. It's a bit different content, but the technology that they work on is the same as what we work on in the cars. That's what got us into the Tesla repair business. They work on 3-phase inverters called uninterruptible power systems with battery storage systems. The only difference is what they power, a whole bunch of servers in a data center versus a drivetrain in a car, an EV car. George says, great show. Happy Sunday to you guys today. 2 thumbs up. Thank you, George. Ingemar from Seattle says, I appreciate you guys. If we ever join you or if you ever join us in Germany, Ingemar, we're going to have a beer in Rosenheim. Highlander says, love to learn. Kindness is still free on YouTube. The Gruber team is in the leading the way, by the way. Thank you. All right. Again, thank you for joining us on this Sunday. We appreciate you very much. We're going to shut down here, and tomorrow is a holiday here in the U.S., and we wish you all a very safe and pleasant holiday.
Muppet Pooh says, great show on TikTok.
Thank you.